Hello, I'm ANEKA from Made to Sew, and welcome to my What Is tutorial. In this What Is tutorial, I'm going to be discussing sewing terminology for the following words: calico, calico toile, toile, and muslin. And they all mean the same thing. It just depends where in the world you live, what words are generally used. They all mean a sample garment, just like you see on my mannequin here. So why those words? Well, the words actually refer to the fabric most commonly used. So the French word for toile actually means canvas or a linen cloth. In the UK, the fabric is normally called calico. This is a 100% cotton fabric. This is the unbleached variety, but you can buy a bleached variety. And it's a very stable woven fabric. In America or the US, the word muslin is used instead of calico. Now, why do you need to make a sample garment? There are a number of reasons you should make a sample garment. I would make a sample garment if I was making a pattern from scratch, like I've done here, or if I was working from another dressmaking pattern that I'd bought in the shop. And there are a number of reasons that I would make my sample garment. The first one is to check the fit. Especially if you're working from a dressmaking pattern that you've bought in the shop, you won't necessarily be the same size as the original block that the dressmaking pattern was created from. Therefore, you may need to change some of the width measurements or the length measurements to fit your individual figure. So you want to check that in your sample garment. You also want to check that you actually like what you've made. I think as dressmakers we can be quite hard on ourselves because we pick up a pattern, we think it looks nice and that we could make that. We make it and we expect to love it. However, how many times have you been into the high street, expected to like something, tried it on and actually hated it because it didn't suit you? So by making a sample garment, you can check that you actually like the style, that it suits you and your individual shape. And finally, I like to actually construct garments before making them in the real fabric. It allows me to think whether I like the instructions that have come with the dressmaking pattern or whether I want to change the order of construction, because based on the fabric that I'm working with, I might want to change the order of something or do a technique in a different way. So when you're making your sample garment, you don't actually need to create all of the pattern pieces. I generally wouldn't bother with your lining and with your facing pieces, or with any things like pockets, unless you really want to check their location and their size on your figure. Now, in terms of the order of construction, I pretty much would always create, whether it was a dress, a top, a jacket, without sleeves, and I would fit it without sleeves first. It would then allow me to make any changes to the shell of the garment, and then I could cut out new sleeves if I needed to, and if I needed to amend them at all, before putting them into the garment and checking those in my sample garment. The same goes for things like collars. If you haven't made any changes to the neckline, you don't really need to put the collar on unless you want to see the size on your figure. So it's all about what works for you and what you want to check in the garment that you're making. As an example, this is probably about sample garment number 4 for this pattern. It's the same as the jacket I'm wearing here. Now, I drafted this from scratch, so when I'm making a sample garment of this, I will be checking not only the fit, but also whether I like the style and the design. You can see, because this is the final garment, that actually I have positioned in a facing and a lining. That was for me to check that I was happy with how it all went together. The construction was perfect. And so when it comes to drafting your own garments, you may find that you need to make a number of sample garments or prototypes. The number that you need to make just depends on the garment. Some work better than others. Sometimes you need to make more sample garments, sometimes you can get away with less. The one thing you will notice here is that the fabric I've used for my lining is different to the calico fabric that I've used for the exterior of the garment. And the reason I've done this is because I wanted to use a fabric that would be more similar to the lining fabric. So this is a really cheap polyester that I've used for my lining. Now, this is where it's important. You need to make sure that the fabric you make up your sample garment in is very similar to the fabric you're going to make up your real garment in. Calico and muslin come in lots of different weights, so you can purchase the right weight for your final garment. However, if you're not making a garment in a woven fabric, perhaps your final garment's going to be in a drapey fabric, you need to make sure that you make your sample garment in a similar drapey fabric. If your final garment is going to be made from a stretch fabric, a knit or a jersey, you need to make your sample garment in the same style of fabric. It needs to have the same amount of stretch as your final fabric. And that's really important. Otherwise, the fitting and design details that you check at this stage might be incorrect when you get them into your final fabric. You can also consider making a working toile or working calico, which you will hear some people talk about. That's when you use a fabric that you don't dislike. It's not calico like this, which means that you have the ability to wear it if it is correct on completion. So you fit your sample garment if you're happy with it, if it fits, even if it's not perfect. You might find you can get away wearing it outside. It might just become housebound or for the gardening or something like that, but it means that it's not going to waste. It really depends on what you want to use your garment for. You'll also see that I've put some markings on the sleeve here. That's because I was looking at quilting my final garment, so I wanted to see how it would look on my sample garment first. And I've often used sample garments for planning the pattern matching that I'm going to have on my final garment as well. The key things to take away from here is that I would really recommend you put the time and effort into making a sample garment. Although it seems like it's more time and more effort than perhaps you want, we all want to get on to sewing the real thing and to having something new in our wardrobe, but it will make the creation of your final garment more successful. It will fit better, you'll be happy with it, and you'll probably understand the construction of it better as well, so it will sew together better. Make your sample garment in a fabric similar to your final garment, and don't worry about the nitty-gritty details, so your lining, your facings, you don't need to hem it, you can just fold it up like I've done here. I really hope this short tutorial has helped you and that you understand what a calico toile or muslin is now. Thanks for watching and see you soon.